Whether you're preparing for sleep, seeking a moment of calm during a hectic day, or simply looking to relax, welcome to Eerie Embers. Don't forget to like, subscribe, also share some stories from your part of the world. Hit the lights, get comfy, and let's begin the journey. Growing up, my family used to camp every summer in the same spot, deep in the woods of North Carolina, not far from a lazy little creek that ran behind the campsite. It was one of those hidden places you don't find on tourist maps. Just trees, water, and silence. I have mostly good memories from those trips, but there's one year, one moment that still sticks with me. No matter how much time passes, I can't shake it. I was about 12, maybe 13. We'd been at the campsite for 2 days already. My cousins and I spent most of our time down by the creek, skipping rocks, catching frogs, doing the usual kid stuff. It was early evening, right before the sun starts to dip, and everything turns that soft gold. I remember it clearly because the light made the water sparkle. That's when I saw her, a girl, maybe my age or maybe a little younger. She was walking through the creek, barefoot, slowly, like she was in a trance. She wore this white dress that clung to her legs in the water. Her long, dark hair covered most of her face. She didn't look at us, didn't speak, just kept moving along the opposite bank, about 20 feet away. We all went quiet. No one even thought to say anything. Then, just as suddenly, she disappeared behind a bend in the trees. I asked my cousin if he saw her too. He just nodded and said, "Yeah, that was weird." But that was it. We brushed it off like kids do. That night, around the fire, I told my uncle what we saw. I figured maybe it was another camper or a local kid playing around. But the second I mentioned the girl in the white dress, my uncle froze. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he stood up, went to his truck, and poured himself a drink. That's when I knew something wasn't right. Later that night, when everyone was in their tents, he pulled me aside. He told me he saw the exact same girl in the exact same creek over 20 years ago. When he was a teenager, camping in that same spot with a group of friends. He said she looked like she was walking on air. Her dress never got wet, and her face was always hidden behind her hair. They'd laughed it off back then, too, until one of their friends went missing later that night. They searched for days, found his backpack downstream, but never found him. He never went back to that creek after that trip, until my dad talked him into joining us all these years later. Hearing that made my skin crawl. I didn't sleep much the rest of the trip. Every sound outside the tent felt too loud. Every rustle of leaves made my heart race. We left a day early, and to this day, no one else in my family talks about her. We never went back to that campsite. And I've tried, believe me, I've tried, to find out if any kid really went missing there. But I've found nothing. No news stories. No missing persons reports. Nothing. It was as if he just disappeared. But I know what I saw. And so does my uncle. There's a girl in that creek. This happened in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey, specifically near Batstow, where the trees are dense, the dirt is red, and the legends run deep. I'm not from there. I live in Philly, but I've always been into cryptid stuff. So when a couple of friends invited me on a fall camping trip out there, I was all in. I mean, Jersey Devil territory. I was hoping we'd at least hear something weird in the woods. I got more than I bargained for. We camped off a side trail that barely showed up on GPS. It was early November, with that stillness in the air like the forest was holding its breath. That first night around the fire, my buddy Ryan started telling the classic Jersey Devil story. Mother Leeds, 13th child, cursed and born a monster in 1735. Hooves, bat wings, glowing red eyes, the whole bit. We laughed about it, told some jokes. Ryan even made Jersey Devil calls in the dark. Real original. But later that night, something answered. We were all half asleep when this high-pitched scream echoed from deep in the woods. Not a coyote, not a fox. I know what those sound like. This was something else. It sounded like a woman screaming and a horse screaming at the same time. Warped, like it didn't belong in this world. We chalked it up to wildlife and went back to sleep. But the next morning, we found something that made us all stop laughing. Footprints. Huge ones. Way too big for a deer. They were cloven hooves, but spaced out like something walking upright. The stride was long, deliberate, and they circled our tents. Twice. Even worse, the leaves around them were scorched, like something hot had touched the ground. There were no campfires near those prints. We decided to pack up early, but as we started hiking out, we realized the trail looked different. Wider, straighter. The trees were twisted just slightly wrong. Sunlight felt dull, like the shadows were too thick, even though it was past noon. And then we came across it. A path through the trees, dead straight, burned into the forest floor. Nothing growing on it. No leaves, no debris. Just blackened dirt, like a tunnel of silence. It was about 10 feet wide, leading deeper into the woods where no trail should have been. There were marks along the edges and scratches high up in the bark, like claws had raked the trees. And every few feet, we found more of those same prints. Hooves still fresh. At that point, none of us said a word. We just kept walking until we got back to the car, trying not to look over our shoulders. When we stopped at a diner on the way home, the waitress saw our gear and said, "Y'all were in the Barrens." We nodded. She leaned in and whispered, "Full moon last night. You know they say he rides on the wind when it's bright enough to see your breath." Then she walked away like it was nothing. I don't know what we saw. I don't know what made those prints. But I'll never forget the way the forest felt that day. Like we weren't just being watched. Like we'd wandered into something ancient. 3 years ago, I went camping with 3 of my friends in the mountains of northern Colorado. We weren't totally off-grid, but we were pretty far from anything resembling civilization. No cell service, no roads, just narrow trails and thick forest for miles. The kind of place where if something goes wrong, you're pretty much on your own. Dangerous, I know. We'd planned for a 2-night trip. The first day went fine. We hiked, set up camp near a small clearing, and spent the evening around a fire. The forecast said the weather would be clear. It wasn't. Sometime after midnight, I woke up to the sound of thunder in the distance. A storm was rolling in fast. Within an hour, the rain was coming down in sheets, and the wind picked up hard enough to collapse one of our tents. We scrambled to grab our stuff and decided to head downhill, hoping to find a better spot to wait it out. That's when we saw it, a cabin. It looked old, like decades old, tucked between 2 large trees with a sagging porch and a tin roof. No lights, but smoke was rising from the chimney, and a soft orange glow flickered inside. At that point, we weren't asking questions. We just wanted out of the rain. We knocked, but no one answered. The door was unlocked. Inside, it was warm. A fire burned in a stone hearth. There were 4 wooden chairs around it, a table with some dry food, crackers, canned beans, even a loaf of bread that somehow wasn't moldy. Dusty, sure, but the place felt lived in, like someone had just stepped out and left it ready for guests. We called out a few times, but no one responded. Eventually, we just decided to stay. We dried off, ate a little, and settled down for the night. We figured we'd thank the owner in the morning and maybe leave a few bucks as a sorry for breaking in gesture. But when we woke up, the fire was out. The air felt wrong, like the whole cabin had been sitting abandoned for years. The food we'd eaten was back on the shelf, untouched, still sealed. The chairs were covered in thick dust. Even our footprints from the night before were gone. We stepped outside. The sky had cleared, but when we turned towards the cabin, it was gone. There was no cabin. For the short moment we weren't looking, it had disappeared. We weren't in a clearing. We were in the middle of a dense, uneven patch of woods. No porch, no stone hearth, no chimney, no flattened ground, just trees and dirt and silence. At first, we thought we'd gotten turned around somehow, but our GPS said we were in the same spot we marked the night before. Same coordinates, same elevation. We spent hours looking, hiked in circles, nothing. We left that forest by sundown, completely shaken. None of us have an explanation. We weren't high. We weren't drunk. We were 4 completely sober people who all experienced the same thing, and then watched it disappear like it was never real. And here's the thing that still messes with me. When I unpacked my bag at home, I found that loaf of bread, unopened, fresh, and it wasn't mine. This happened in the summer of 2018, during a camping trip in Olympic National Park, up in Washington State. It was just me and my friend Nate. We were both into backpacking and thought it'd be fun to get off the main trails and spend a weekend way out. We hiked most of the day and found a spot to set up near a stream, surrounded by trees on all sides. It felt safe, quiet. That night, after dinner, we sat by the fire for a bit before calling it. Nate took the small tent, and I set up my hammock with a tarp over it. But I decided to sleep on the ground that night, wrapped in my sleeping bag under the stars. Around midnight, I woke up needing to pee. The stars were still out, and everything was dead silent except for the stream a few dozen yards away. I got up, did my business, and crawled back into the sleeping bag. As I slid my legs in, I felt something at the bottom. Warm, round, like an animal curled up near my feet. My first instinct was that it was a raccoon or maybe a possum that had crawled in for warmth. I froze, didn't move, tried to gently feel with my foot, but whatever it was, it grabbed my ankle. Not like a claw or a bite, no. It felt like a hand. 5 distinct fingers, ice cold. And it didn't scratch or hurt me, it just held me. I yanked my leg back and rolled out of the sleeping bag, heart pounding, scrambling away on the dirt. But when I turned around and looked inside, the bag was empty. No animal, no hand, no anything. I even shook it out, turned it inside out. Nothing came out, not a leaf, not a bug. It was just empty. I stood there, barefoot and shaking, trying to convince myself I had imagined it. Maybe it was a muscle spasm. Maybe my foot hit a seam in the fabric. Something, anything. But I know what I felt. That grip. It held me. It was intentional. I ended up sleeping sitting up by the fire for the rest of the night. The next morning, I told Nate. He laughed at first until I showed him the sleeping bag. Down at the bottom, on the inside lining, there were faint smudges. Long, thin marks, like fingerprints. 4 lines and a thumb. Pressed into the fabric, dark and greasy like old oil. They weren't there the day before. I threw the bag away as soon as we got home. I still go camping even after this incident, but I've never used a sleeping bag without checking it at least 3 times. And I never sleep with my feet all the way in anymore. Because whatever that thing was, it was already waiting for me. This happened last fall, during a weekend camping trip in upstate New York. It was me, my girlfriend, and 2 of our close friends. We found this beautiful remote site near the Catskills. There are no marked trails, no nearby campsites, just dense woods and a clearing with just enough space for 2 tents and a fire pit. The first day was perfect. The weather was crisp. The trees were just starting to turn gold and red, and we had the entire forest to ourselves. Played some cards and shared some stories. That night, after dinner, we were sitting around the fire when I noticed something strange. Just beyond the tree line, maybe 30 or 40 feet away, I saw a man. He was standing between 2 trees, perfectly still, wearing what looked like a red flannel shirt and dark pants. I thought it was just a trick of the light at first. Shadows can do weird things out there, and the mind make up things. But I nudged my girlfriend and whispered, "Do you see that?" She glanced up, squinted her eyes, and froze. "Who is that?" That's when my stomach dropped. It wasn't just me. My friend Mark stood up and called out, "Hey, you okay?" No answer. The man didn't move, didn't acknowledge us. Just stood there blending with the trees. We grabbed our flashlights and shined them into the trees. But the second the light touched where he was gone. We thought maybe he ran off. We even looked around a bit, calling out. Nothing. Eventually, we convinced ourselves it was probably a hiker who got lost, or maybe some creep messing with us. But that wasn't the last time we saw him. The next night, same time, right after sunset, he was back. Same spot. Same red flannel. Same eerie stillness. But this time, he was closer. Maybe 20 feet away. His face was shadowed, but his head was tilted slightly, like he was studying us. Again, the moment we tried to shine the light towards him, he was gone. Just vanished. We didn't sleep much that night. We weren't taking any chances. On the third night, we built the fire up brighter, bigger, talked louder, tried to act like we weren't scared. But the tension was thick. No one was really eating. No one was laughing. We kept glancing at the trees, and sure enough, just as the sun dipped below the ridge, he returned. Only this time, he was inside the tree line, 10 feet away. I could see the pattern on his flannel shirt more clearly. Could almost make out his face, but not quite. It was just off, like it wasn't shaped right. None of us said a word. No one moved. And then, just for a moment, he smiled. A slow, wide smile that didn't look human. It was too big and too unnatural. And then, he turned and walked back into the trees. He made no sound as he walked. No leaves crunching. We packed up before the fire went out. Didn't even wait for morning. We hiked 2 hours in the dark, back to the car, glancing at our surroundings every now and then. We've never gone back to that site. And every once in a while, when I see someone in a red flannel shirt, I could feel my stomach tighten. But I still don't know what we saw out there. And the part that still bothers me to this day is that he knew when we saw him, but still came closer every time. I've always loved camping. Being out in the middle of nowhere with nothing but trees, stars, and a campfire. It helps me clear my head in a way nothing else can. Last summer, my friend Josh and I decided to hike a lesser-known trail in the Pacific Northwest. It was remote with no cell service, no other campers, just us and the woods. We set up camp near a clearing, maybe a mile from a narrow creek we passed on the way in. The first night was uneventful. We cooked, told stories, had a few drinks, and eventually crashed for the night. But the second night, something was different. Around 1 a.m., I woke up needing to pee. I unzipped the tent and stepped out. The fire had mostly died down, just glowing embers left. The forest was dead silent, except for the occasional rustling of leaves in the breeze. Just what I needed. But just as I was about to walk towards the side of the tent, something caught my eye, or someone. He was standing just beyond the tree line, maybe 20 or 30 feet away. Perfectly still, just watching us. At first, I thought it had to be another camper, maybe someone who'd gotten turned around and was looking for help. But something felt wrong. He didn't have a flashlight, no gear. He wasn't saying anything, just standing there like a statue. I whispered back into the tent to wake Josh. He groggily poked his head out and squinted into the dark. "What the hell is that?" he whispered. I grabbed my flashlight and, against my better judgment, pointed it toward the trees. That was the moment I realized something was very, very wrong. When the light hit him, it was like as if it slid off him, like he wasn't quite real and quite there. And then I saw his face, or rather what should have been his face. There was nothing, no eyes, no mouth, no features at all, just smooth, pale skin like a blank canvas. Josh gasped loudly as the thing moved, not toward us, not away, like it was glitching, shifting slightly to the left, then back again, like a skipped frame in a video. I don't remember running back into the tent. I just remember zipping it shut, heart pounding, and whispering to Josh not to say a word. We didn't sleep, just laid there, frozen, until the sky started to seep through the trees. When we finally got the nerve to come out, the spot where we'd seen him was empty. No footprints and no sign anyone had been there. We packed up and left that morning, cutting the trip short by 2 days. I haven't been camping since, but sometimes I still dream about that face or lack of one. And every time I wake up with the same thought. If it had wanted to come closer, I don't think anything would have stopped it. This happened back in 2019 in Northern California, a place called 6 Rivers National Forest. I was camping solo, something I'd done a handful of times before, not because I'm a survivalist or anything. I just enjoy the peace. The feeling of solace that the trees and the surrounding quiet offer just have a certain pull on me. I'd picked a lesser-known trail recommended by a ranger I'd spoken to earlier that summer. He warned me it was remote and barely maintained, but said if I was experienced, I'd be fine. He just added, keep an eye on the weather. It moves fast up there. I should have listened more closely to that. The first day went well. I hiked in about 8 miles and set up camp near a small alpine lake, crystal clear, untouched. I didn't see a single soul all day. That night, around 2 a.m., I woke up to complete silence. No crickets, no wind, not even the sound of water lapping the shore. Just dead, absolute stillness. And fog. A thick, unnatural fog had rolled in, so dense I couldn't see more than 10 feet in any direction. I wasn't panicking yet. Fog happens, but it felt wrong, like it didn't belong to that place. I got out of my tent to check on things and immediately felt watched. You know the feeling you get when someone's watching you without your knowledge? That crawling sensation under your skin. That's what I felt. That's when I saw it. Eyes. Glowing, amber-colored eyes floating just beyond the edge of visibility. Maybe 20 feet away. Not moving, just watching me. I froze, tried to rationalize it. maybe deer, maybe an owl, but these eyes were too high, maybe 7 or 8 feet off the ground. And there were more than one pair, 4, 5, 6. I couldn't tell how many. They didn't blink. I slowly backed into my tent and zipped it shut. Not that it would help. I didn't sleep. In the morning, the fog was still there, just as thick. And when I stepped outside, everything had changed. The lake was gone. No, I mean gone. The trees looked different. The slope of the land had shifted. Even the trail I'd come in wasn't there. It was like I'd teleported in a slightly wrong part of the forest. I checked my GPS. Nothing. No signal, which was expected. But my compass, spinning, useless, like I was standing on a magnet. I packed up in a panic and picked a direction, hoping to find my way back. That hike should have taken 2 hours. It took me 3 days, and when I finally found a ranger station, they were already out looking for me. They said I'd been missing for 6 days, not 3 days. But I swear I was only gone for 3 days by my count. I was lucid the whole time. I wasn't dehydrated nor hungry to the point of collapse where I can't think clearly. Where did those 3 days go? I sat down to collect my thoughts and try to remember every detail of that hike back. But I can't. It was blank. Completely blank. A ranger later told me gently that I wasn't the first. People vanish up there all the time. No sign of struggle, no gear found, sometimes no footprints. They called them missing 411 cases. Hikers vanishing in clear weather, experienced outdoorsmen stepping off trail and never coming back. I tried searching these cases just after I got back home, probably just to find some explanation to what happened during that hike. One case stuck with me. A boy, 12 years old, went missing about 10 years earlier, same general area. He was found 2 weeks later, 15 miles uphill, barefoot, no shoes, no scratches on his feet, and no memory of how he got there. The only thing he remembered was the glowing eyes in the fog. This happened to me and my cousin Josh in the summer of 2017 in Colorado. We were camping on public land outside of Gunnison. One of those spots you have to hike into. No cars, no hookups, just wilderness. We picked a place right near the tree line, about 9,000 feet up. Gorgeous view of the mountains, meadows all around, and a thick wall of pines starting about 40 yards from where we pitched our tent. It was peaceful. Birds, breeze, nothing unusual. Until night fell. The first thing I noticed was how still everything got. You always hear people talk about the forest going quiet. But this was worse, like the world hit mute. We were sitting by the fire, trying to joke around when we heard it, a scream. Not a human scream, not exactly, but close enough. It sounded like something trying to imitate a person. Like if you taught a bear what fear sounds like, and it gave its best shot. It came from the tree line. Just one at first, then another, and another. Each one from a different spot in the woods. Like something or some things were calling out to each other. We stood up and flashlights sweeping the forest, trying to spot anything. That's when we saw it. Something stepped out from the trees, but just a silhouette. It was tall and thin, almost too thin, arms that hung too low. No visible face, just an outline against the trees. It didn't move toward us. It just stood there, watching. Then another stepped out, to the left, then another. 3 shapes standing still and just watching us. Josh whispered, "What the hell is that?" I didn't answer, because I was watching something else. The tree line itself was kind of moving, not the wind. The trees were shaking, like something large was weaving between them, fast and low to the ground, making a sound I can only describe as a mix between a growl and static. It passed behind the figures. Then they turned in unison and stepped back into the trees. In the blink of an eye, they were gone. We didn't sleep the rest of the night. We just waited for sunrise. In the morning, everything looked normal again. The birds were back. The breeze felt light. The forest didn't look threatening anymore. Except for one thing. Right at the edge of the trees, carved into the bark of 3 separate trunks, were deep vertical gashes. Not animal claw marks or tool marks. It was precise and deliberate, like someone or something had been counting. 3 trees, 3 marks each. We left there and then. We haven't been back since. Last fall, I drove about 3 hours out to a national forest I'd never been to before. You may call it a spur-of-the-moment kind of decision. It was late in the season, so the campsites were basically empty. I picked a spot near a clearing, pitched my tent, and settled in for the night. Everything felt perfect. That first night was normal as it should be. I made a small fire, cooked some dinner, listened to the wind rustling through the trees, and eventually crawled into my sleeping bag. Around 2 a.m., I woke up for no real reason. It was dead silent outside, except for the occasional sound of the wind hitting the trees and crackle of embers from my fire. I unzipped my tent to survey my surroundings. That's when I noticed it, another fire deep in the woods, maybe 150 feet away, just barely visible through the trees. It hadn't been there earlier. I was sure of it. I'd walked the area before sunset. No signs of anyone else. No cars. No gear. Nothing. But now, clear as day, there was a flickering orange glow behind the trees. My first thought was maybe someone showed up late and didn't want to be seen. But then I realized there were no sounds coming from the direction of the fire. No voices. No movement. Not even the crackling of firewood. Just the glow. I watched it for a while, waiting to see if someone would walk past or if the fire would dim. It didn't. Eventually, I went back to sleep. I know. I should have packed up and left then and there. But when you're out there alone, you talk yourself into staying calm. You don't want to believe anything weird is happening. The next morning, I decided to check it out. I walked toward where I thought I saw the fire, but there was nothing. No burned wood, no ashes, no disturbed brush, no sign that anyone or anything had been there. Nothing had been disturbed, just the empty forest floor. I tried to convince myself I imagined it, that maybe I was dreaming or the moonlight played tricks on my eyes. That night, I kept my fire going a little longer, just in case. Around 1:45 a.m., I saw it again. The same fire, in the same spot, except this time it was closer. But this time I could see the shape of someone sitting near it, a figure, still and hunched. Their head turned just slightly toward me, like they knew I was watching. I didn't sleep a wink after that. I stayed inside my tent, gripping the handle of my hatchet until the sky turned gray. When I stepped out in the morning, the woods were silent, and the fire was gone again. No trace. I packed up and left that day. I haven't been back to that specific forest, nor have I gone camping alone since, either. I used to think Bigfoot stories were a joke. You know, just tall tales from hunters and YouTube weirdos. I was a science guy. Still am. Wildlife biology major. Spent most of college hiking and doing trail cams in the Pacific Northwest. But something happened in 2020 during a backpacking trip in Washington's Olympic National Forest that still makes the hair on my arms stand up. And I haven't laughed at a Sasquatch story since. It was me and two friends, Jace and Lenny. We de-planned a 4-day backcountry loop along a river valley not far from Forks. Beautiful stretch of wilderness, thick old growth, almost zero cell signal. Elk, black bears, the usual. The first 2 days were perfect. Clear weather, no bugs, great trail conditions. But on the third night, everything changed. It started with the tree knocks. Just after dark, while we were sitting around the fire, we heard this deep thunk like someone hitting a tree with a baseball bat. Then another, from a different direction. Then another, surrounding us. Lenny joked that it was woodpeckers, but I'm telling you, no woodpecker hits that hard or that rhythmically. It felt deliberate, like a signal. We didn't see anything, but the woods got real quiet. No frogs, no owls, not even wind, just those knocks. That night, I barely slept. Around 2 a.m., I heard something outside the tent. Not footsteps, but thuds. Heavy, measured, like something walking on 2 feet. It paused behind my tent. I held my breath. Then I heard deep breathing. Slow, wet, right behind the nylon, then nothing. I didn't move a muscle until dawn. In the morning, we found footprints. Massive, at least 18 inches long, sunk deep in the soft moss. Whatever made them walked right through our camp, I wonder. And in the middle of the clearing, someone or something had left a structure. A triangle of broken branches leaned together like a crude teepee. It hadn't been there the day before, and it wasn't random. It was placed. I've studied animal behavior. Nothing in this forest does that. We wanted to brush it off, but that night it got worse. No fire this time. We didn't feel right lighting one. Around midnight, we heard the howl. Not a wolf, not a coyote. It was too long and too guttural. It echoed through the trees like it was everywhere and nowhere at once. Jace started whispering, "I think we need to leave. I don't think it wants us here." And then, from deep in the forest, came a sound I'll never forget. A scream, not an animal, a person, a man begging but garbled, like his throat had been ripped out. Then silence. We packed up and hiked out in the dark, flashlights and adrenaline. We didn't talk the whole way back. It was supposed to be a week-long trip, just 4 of us, me, my younger brother Liam, our cousin Danny, and his best friend Troy. We were all in our early 20s, outdoorsy, and honestly just wanted to get off the grid for a while. This happened in 2015 in northern Ontario, near Lake Nipigon. We picked a spot deep in the woods, far from cell towers, far from roads, just pine trees, ice-cold lakes, and the kind of silence that feels sacred. On the second day, Troy went missing. We thought he was just off gathering firewood or maybe trying to fish on his own. But by the time the sun started going down and he hadn't come back, we knew something was wrong. We spent hours calling for him, retracing our steps, looking for signs. Around dusk, Danny found him, or what was left of him. I won't go into detail for obvious reasons, but he'd been mauled, not by a bear. We know what bear attacks look like. This was cleaner, almost surgical, like something with claws had ripped him apart and then just left. It didn't make sense. No drag marks, no tracks, just Troy's body, face barely recognizable, lying in the pine needles like something had placed him there. We were in shock. We wrapped him in a tarp, marked the spot, and decided to hike out at first light to find help. No one was thinking straight. I think we all went a little numb. That night, we barely spoke. We sat around the fire, just staring into the flames. Forest was so quiet it hurt. Then sometime after midnight, we heard him, Troy's voice, calling from the woods. Guys, I'm lost. It's me, Troy. Come get me." It was his exact voice. Same rhythm. Same way he said guys, like a joke, like he was smiling. We froze. Danny stood up first and started yelling, "Troy." But I grabbed his arm and said, "Don't. We found him. We found him." But the voice came again. Closer this time. "Guys, seriously, it's cold. I'm hurt. Help me." It was coming from behind the trees, the same place where we'd found his body. That's when Liam whispered, "He's saying he's cold." That hit me hard, because earlier that day, when we were covering Troy's body, Liam had said those exact words. He must have been cold out here before it happened. There's no way anyone else could have heard that. No one but us. The voice was mimicking us, like it had been listening. We grabbed our knives. I grabbed the hatchet. And we huddled near the fire, watching the tree line. Never saw anything move, but we felt it, like the forest itself was holding its breath, watching, smiling with teeth. In the morning, the voice was gone. The woods were dead silent again. We packed everything, marked Troy's location with GPS, and made it out to a ranger station by nightfall. They called in recovery teams. The official cause was listed as animal predation. Bear or cougar. They didn't push it. But the local ranger, an older guy, pulled us aside, and asked where exactly we had camped. When we told him, he went quiet. Then he said, "That's near Wendigo Land." You boys heard any voices? We didn't answer. He just nodded like he already knew. "If you hear someone calling to you out there," he said, "and you know they're gone, don't answer. It's not them anymore." This happened in 2021 in the Bitterroot Mountains on the border between Montana and Idaho. It was supposed to be a chill, late-season camping trip. Just me, my brother, and his friend Derek. We're all into hiking and wanted one more weekend in the backcountry before the snow came in. The first day went smooth. Weather was perfect, trail was clear, and we set up camp near a ridgeline with a killer view of the valley. That night, while we were eating, Derek mentioned something kind of out of nowhere. He grew up around the Flathead Reservation and started talking about old stories his grandfather used to tell. Warnings, really. About spirits in the mountains that could wear your skin or mimic people just enough to fool you until it was too late. He said not to whistle at night, not to say your real name in the woods after dark. Stuff like that. We laughed it off, not because we didn't believe him, but because what else do you do when someone says, "Don't draw attention to yourself, or it'll come walking"? He just shrugged and said, "Suit yourselves. But if you see something out there that walks like a man, but don't feel like one, don't look at it too long." That stuck with me, and I wish I'd taken it more seriously. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing this crunching noise outside the tent, like footsteps, but not steady, kind of broken, shuffling and dragging, then quick, deliberate steps, then silence, then more shuffling. I thought maybe it was a deer or worse, a bear. But when I peeked through the tent flap, I saw something. It was tall, taller than any of us. Maybe 68, maybe more. It stood just past the firelight, and it looked mostly like a man, but its arms were too long. Its knees bent just a little too far backward, and the way it moved, it was like someone learning how to walk for the first time. Every step looked wrong, like its joints didn't quite understand which way they were supposed to bend. It would take a step, pause, then twitch suddenly, like it was adjusting to a new body. It circled the tents. Once, twice. At one point, it stopped and tilted its head, just like a curious dog, but too far. It went almost horizontal. Then it started walking toward my tent. I couldn't breathe. I just sat there, gripping my knife, knowing damn well it wouldn't help if that thing came inside. But it didn't. It walked right past my tent, dragging one leg, and stopped in front of Derek's. Then, in a soft, raspy voice, I heard it say Derek's name, exactly like I would say it, using my voice. I swear to you, I hadn't spoken in hours. That thing copied me. I could hear Derek whisper inside, "Who's out there?" But he didn't open the tent. Thank God. After what felt like forever, the thing turned, walked back toward the trees, and just vanished. Didn't run, didn't fade, It just stepped behind a tree and never came out the other side. We left at first light. On the trail back, Derek was pale and quiet. At one point, he stopped, looked at both of us, and said, "My grandfather used to say, if you see something in the woods that walks like a man, but don't move like one, don't talk to it. It will remember you." We drove home in complete silence. We haven't returned to that mountain ever since. It was right at the tail end of camping season, where it was cold enough to keep most folks out of the woods, but still bearable with the right gear. It was just me and my college roommate, Nolan. We'd camped all over the Midwest, but we picked this area because of how remote it was. Just a few fire roads and hunting trails carved through the trees. We'd set up camp about 4 miles off the trailhead. It was late afternoon. Trees were packed tight, mostly pine, and the underbrush was almost non-existent, just dry needles and patches of moss. It was too quiet. No birds, no breeze. That night after dinner, we were sitting by the fire talking about the stress of the exams when we heard movement. Heavy movement. Not a squirrel, not a deer. Something bipedal, walking just beyond the reach of the firelight. We both froze. Nolan called out, thinking it might be another hiker. No answer. But at the same time, the footsteps stopped. A few minutes later, we heard them again, this time on the other side now, like it had circled around. This went on for over an hour. We'd shine our lights into the trees, but we never saw anything. Just shapes and shadows moving from one tree to the next. At one point, yellow eyes reflected back, low to the ground, then suddenly too high to belong to any animal we know. That's when we noticed the scratch marks. Deep gouges in the bark of a nearby tree. 4 slashes, but too wide for a bear, too deliberate for random damage. The marks were at head level. "Wolverines out here, huh?" Nolan joked, but I wasn't laughing. We set up trail cams before turning in, just 2 cheap infrared ones. One near the path, another facing the tree line. I barely slept. I kept hearing sniffing, long, drawn-out breaths just outside the tent. And once a low growl, so close I thought whatever it was had its mouth against the tent wall. In the morning, the fire was dead. One of our packs was missing, ripped clean off a branch we'd hung it from. No drag marks, no paw prints. It was just gone. We checked the cameras. The one near the trail was fried, totally dead. Batteries melted, the plastic warped, but the other one had one image before it shut off. Just one. It showed a tall, hunched figure halfway between man and beast, covered in mottled gray fur. It got long arms, canine snout, yellow eyes, and standing maybe 20 feet from our tent. The timestamp was 3:12 a.m. It was right when I heard the growl. We packed up fast. Didn't even eat breakfast. Just bolted down the trail, looking over our shoulders the whole time. We didn't talk about it for a while, but later I looked it up. Found old reports going back decades, something called the Michigan Dogman. Half man, half wolf. seen mostly around Wexford County, but apparently all over the northern woods. Some people think it's a hoax, a campfire story, but I know what I saw. I know what followed us, and I know it was smart, too smart. This happened in the Smoky Mountains near Clingman's Dome, back in the fall of 2019. 4 of us went out for a weekend backpacking trip. Me, Ben, my girlfriend Avery, and our quiet friend Mason. We were all used to hiking and camping, but we chose a less traveled trail this time. One that looped around a remote ridge with barely any cell coverage and no marked campsites. The idea was to unplug for a few days. It made camp near a shallow stream that curved around mossy stones and fed into a thicker part of the forest. It was almost midnight. Avery and I were still up by the fire chatting, while Ben went off to the tree line to pee. That's when we first saw them. Blue lights, soft, flickering, like fireflies, but slower. Too big for bugs. It was more like orbs. They hovered between the trees, maybe 30 or 40 yards away, drifting and bouncing gently, like they were floating on invisible currents. Ben came back a moment later and asked if we saw it too. We nodded. Mason stood up, staring. He looked kinda drawn to them. We figured maybe it was swamp gas or something, but Mason started walking toward them slowly, like in a trance. I called out to him, but he didn't answer, just kept following the lights as they moved deeper into the forest, staying just out of reach. We grabbed flashlights and went after him, but the trail disappeared fast. The woods were thick, and the lights kept vanishing behind trees, reappearing farther off, like they were leading him somewhere. Then the lights blinked out, and Mason was gone. We searched for hours, yelled his name, circled the area, but no sign of him. Avery wanted to call for help, but we had no signal. We were about to head back to camp and wait for daylight when I heard water rushing, like someone walking in a stream. We turned and followed the sound until we saw Mason, standing barefoot in the creek. His boots were gone. His shirt was soaked. His eyes were wide and glassy, staring straight ahead at nothing. We asked what happened, where he went, and what he saw. He didn't respond for a while. Then, in a whisper, he said he saw it and wants us to come back. We got him back to camp and warmed him up. He didn't sleep. None of us really did. In the morning, we found his boots placed side by side at the stream's edge. They were dry and clean, as if someone had set them there. We didn't stay there any longer than the time needed to pack our stuff.